This is a rocket booster falling back to Earth from the Long March 2C launch vehicle, and it struck a Chinese village. You can see in the footage here the yellow smoke trail carrying its toxic fuel, and it crashed into this village. And people are scrambling to run away from the impact zone here. After launching the SVOM X-ray telescope from the Xichang Satellite Launching Center, it fell eastwards to this village in Guizhou province. And this is footage from allegedly earlier in this year, and after the launch of that rocket, 20 people got injured. Of course, from the same thing, rocket falling back to Earth. And this was a bit earlier than that. This is December of 2023, and debris from a rocket booster fell into Baise City in Guangxi province, and it fell very close to a residential building and power line. Prior to this, they did announce the surrounding area to evacuate. Usually the damage is quite severe, and the government likely won't reimburse the damage to your building or any area that belongs to the village that has been destroyed because of this rocket debris. And the worst part is you see this large toxic fume, the yellow cloud, that appears after it crashed. And the booster contains the highly toxic hypergolic fuel, which has been known to cause cancer, and it probably spreads across the area of where the village was impacted. But hey, in some cases, at least you'll get scrap metal cash afterwards. And take a look at this picture. It's the aftermath of that rocket, and it reminds me of a scene in a zombie movie where they shot this virus missile somewhere and it starts to infect the local population. It looks quite apocalyptic to me. Now, what the videos show is a regular occurrence in China. They launch all of these space rockets for different purposes, the space race against the United States, without providing the safety levels that you see in the US when it comes to recovering the launched vehicle. Now, of course, China in the so-called space race against the US neglect the safety part. Now, in the United States, the launch sites are usually near the ocean, and when it is recovered, it's recovered falling back into the ocean. So none of the actual residential areas or villages are damaged. And in many other cases, they develop these landing recovery measures just so that it doesn't crash back into Earth. And this video in comparison shows the SpaceX launching recovery measures that they have been using for several years, which China, of course, again neglects. Now, the apparent facade that China can go to space and they can do the same thing as the US, on the surface it looks great for the nationalistic propaganda purpose for their triumphant victory over the United States when it comes to space. But in reality, it comes at the cost of human suffering, the Chinese people who are miserable in their livelihood, who have to sustain this type of event just so that the government can say that we beat the US in their space race. Now let's talk about another crazy story from China. About a week and a half ago, I released this short video.
What a great story this is. This is Zhang, a 17-year-old girl who is a fashion design major at a local technical school, but she recently won a mathematical competition as the only non-college entrant, placing 12th in a pool of 800 people.
Her name is Zhang. She's a math lover and apparently a math genius at that. She's actually a fashion student at a vocational high school. She didn't even attend a regular high school, but she beat the odds against her family background, against her education, placing 13th in this global math competition, which was started by Alibaba, and as the only entrant without a proper college education. Sounds pretty amazing, right? But I regret to inform you now that this might actually be fake. Yeah, what a surprise. China may be faking a math genius, beating many of the famous college grads or famous college students from Cambridge, from Harvard, etc. And this really shocked everybody. So initially people thought that she must have been some, really talented person who is super into math, and that she has been able to do this all on her own against her family's, financial situation, unable to even send her to a regular high school. She has to attend a vocational high school, which basically focuses on trade, and she studies fashion design, that she was doing math on her own time, that she was able to attend this competition and beat out people who likely are much more educated and potentially, even have access to the top cutting edge level of academic skills when it comes to math. And she's able to place the 13th, being the only female in the top 30 and at the age of 17, and not even having a name in their college yet. And by the way, this competition, because there's no real limit as to, you need to have a degree to enter, so a lot of people actually sign up just for the sake of testing their math limit. And so when this came out, everybody in the media, online, social media, all just blew up and super surprised, obviously happy that she's in this place. But then curious people started to dig into her interview video, her math skills, and trying to see if there was something fishy going on. Long story short, she said some questionable stuff in her interview video, which she basically could not repeat some of the mathematical theories, or she couldn't recall some things. And here's the biggest part where it kind of made people question her background. She says she was studying a partial differential equation, which seems to be a very tough topic in math, on her own. She was also completing homework and submitting them using LaTeX, which is a mathematical software used by professionals and people in science and math to submit documentations online. And apparently it takes a year or two to master this software. And in some of the shots of the video interview, they were showing her with a blackboard and she's copying this answer or a proof to a math question on the blackboard, and they saw some very obvious mistakes. For example, one of them is that she wrote sigma as divide by 2. And then also she wrote the gamma function, which is another symbol, backward. It's supposed to be written like an R, but she wrote it like a T. And then where there is supposed to be an infinite symbol, she wrote -1. And then she also straight up didn't know what she was talking about when it comes to this math problem. And it sounds like she was basically copying whatever was written on the math book and simply not understanding what she was writing down. And one of the obvious mistakes that really got everybody to start to question her even more is the fact that she wrote the alphabet Z with a dot on top, which stands for Z derivative or derivative of Z, as a Chinese character meaning main or meaning leader or meaning primary. So at first people thought that against her family background, against her education, disadvantage, she was going to excel and to attend a prestigious college based on her own merit, has now turned into a full-on public opinion battle online, basically questioning who exactly wants her to succeed as this so-called math genius, who is behind her, who's trying to set her up. Now, if you ask what my opinion on this is that I would say like 7-3, right? 70% she is likely a setup or some sort of a victim of this elaborate mathematical achievement scheme, just based on one fact, because if you think about it, everything else is that you are innocent until proven guilty, right? Whether that's with the law or anything like that. But when it comes to academia, it is up to the person who wants to provide a breakthrough in that field to prove to others questioning this person that what they're saying is true. So basically it means that if you want to provide a scientific theory and you want to prove that this is what's actually real, you have to provide the evidence and not the person that's questioning you. So you have to have, like, the burden of proof is on the person that wants to show achievements, if that makes sense. So it's very different than what we traditional believe will be that it's like you're innocent until you're guilty. Proven guilty, that is. Now, back to that example I was talking about with turning a math symbol into a Chinese character. To prove this, people started to look into her stroke pattern in the ways in which she wrote the symbol. And it was determined that obviously she was writing in Chinese at this point. And when it comes to LaTeX, which again is a very difficult software for a 15-year-old at the time who attended vocational school to be able to master by the time she's 17 and use it proficiently. And it's not something that can be done. It is possible to be done by somebody very young, but often, you have to be trained in this stuff. I think it takes something like hundreds of hours to be really good at using it. Now, what's even worse is that people found out that within that same competition where she entered, she placed 13th in, her math tutor and instructors both entered and placed lower than her in that same competition. Well, this is the preliminary round, so the finals were coming up. It really transpired into two sides. One of them thinks that because she is just this math genius, she's a girl, and she has everything sort of, skill-wise and talent-wise lined up for her, that people who are jealous of her, are critical of her, simply are haters. And the other side is saying that we're using rationality, we're using simple, math proofs and evidence to suggest that what she's doing does not qualify her to be so-called genius. And, it really, the debate is still going on today, but the latest information is that she has taken the final of this competition, but we won't get the results until August. So until then, we can only speculate what her real talent is or lack of talent would be. Until that point, we can really just say that the evidence is stacked against her because it just looks quite ridiculous that she's allegedly really in love with math, but unable to tell some of these symbols who are quite basic if you have taken calculus before. And Tsinghua University, which is a top university in China, did a internal straw poll. The students who took the poll says they don't believe that she is very good at math and that her skills are simply fabricated. And only 2% of them believed that Zhang Ping is actually a real math genius. Obviously, this is a watershed in the judgment. If you have a straw poll from a top Chinese university, this ultimately boils down to two parts, right? One side, you have the nationalistic pride versus the other side, which is rational scientific thinking. Which one do you really believe is really based on which social media in China that you use? And where does the state media stand? Of course, they're providing a lot of coverage for this math genius, and they are siding with the fact that she is a real math genius and that, she did all of this based on her merit. Again, I think in the end, it doesn't really matter if she is, did some really random stuff on her interview video. Her preliminary result shows that she's placed 13th. Her final result we'll just have to watch out for. But just based on track record, right? This is not the first time China has faked something like this of achievements of just trying to propagandize this individual person as sort of a nationalistic hero of achievement. People are comparing her to like famous Chinese rocket scientists, physics professors, etc. And we'll have to see. There's a huge chance that the results may shock all of us. Anyways, that's it today for the episode on two really bizarre stories in China. If you enjoy the content, leave a like, comment, leave your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, bye-bye.